All right, party people, you are here to learn about how to build a property portfolio to do whatever it is that you want with the cash flow, whether it's, maybe you want 50K to, I don't know, pay for a mortgage, all right, or maybe arrange somewhere, or maybe make a partner retired or half retired or something like that. But today I'm going to teach you how to build a cash flowing property portfolio by essentially buying really easy bread and butter properties to hold on to them forever and live off the rental income. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's a lot more simple than what I think a lot of people make out to be. So I want to nail that on the head today. Okay, so let's start off with a couple of principles. I'm going to walk you through some steps of the things that I'm going to step through. So first of all, what I'm going to teach you why 90% of millionaires become so from investing in real estate. That's extremely important. I'm then going to teach you why 90% of property investors get stuck at 2 properties. It's a very sad story. So let's walk through that. And then I'm going to teach you what you need to not get stuck. So this is my summarization of about 7 years worth of my learnings. All right. Sort of packaged into a small short video here for you. So I'm going to teach you the 3 magic ingredients that you need. And then I'm also going to walk you through some of the things that you need to do to start off. Like, where do you even start now that you have this knowledge? Okay, cool. So here's for the ride with me today. So the first thing that I'm actually going to teach you is a book that I read called Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's by Robert Kiyosaki, very successful in business and real estate as well. And he teaches this quadrant, what we call the cash flow quadrant. This is important, I think, to know because it's what I learned to start off with. So I'm just teaching you sort of what I learned at the start as well. So I'm just sort of going through that journey with you. Okay. So first of all, this is for most countries around the world. Okay, from his tax accountant, which actually used to be Trump's tax accountant, and who wouldn't want to learn off somebody like that who has that amount of resources. Okay, so this screen that I'm showing you here, the left side and the right side are the same sort of thing. It's just one's got a bit of a different sort of visualization to it. So let's walk through it. On the left-hand side, this is called the cash flow quadrant. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you've got the E and the S, which stands for employees who have a job, and the S stands for self-employed or small business owner. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, we've got business owner or a big business owner, and then we've got I for an investor. Okay, so if we look to this left-hand picture over here, we have 40%. This is the tax brackets around the world. Okay, so the typical most employees around most countries around the world pay roughly about 40% in taxes being an employee. If you're self-employed, you're paying the highest, or maybe you're a contractor, like your doctors, your lawyers, maybe even your like your developers and your IT people, right? Those sort of contractors. 60% on average is what they're paying in taxes. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, oh my goodness, big business owners paying 20%, investors are paying 0%. Why? So think of it like this. Think of taxes as partnering up with the government. So partnering up with the government means if I create a big business, the government's like, oh, thank you, Mr. Big Business Owner, for creating jobs. Here's a bunch of tax incentives. Okay, Mr. Investor, thank you so much for creating roofs or homes over people's heads. Here's a bunch of tax incentives. So the government loves it when you do these sort of things. Now, today's not about taxes. I just want to talk about that investing in property. One of the benefits, and I think it should be the icing on the cake, right, is the tax incentives that we have in Australia. Okay, actually most countries, but I'm just talking about Australia right now, okay, because the governments love it. It's partnering up with them. And one of the things that we don't focus on enough, especially for employees, I used to be an employee, so I know what it's like, is we think about so much, we put so much effort into thinking about, oh, how can I save this bill and how can I cut back on this bill? Maybe it's like my gas bill or my water bill or maybe my Netflix or one of my subscriptions, but yet you don't look at the taxes that you paid before you got your paycheck. And that's one of the biggest downsides to being an employee is you kind of get stuck in that sort of, in that rhythm, okay? One of the easiest things that I personally found as an employee, I was like, well, how do I get to the right side? Well, I said, okay, I don't have a big business idea. And that seems so difficult, so hard away, but I know that I could start the investing thing, so let's do that. So I moved slowly from the E to the I, all right? All right, so let's talk about my 3 favorite words as to why a lot of property investors love real estate. Essentially, the biggest word is leverage. Leverage means being able to tap into somebody else's opportunities or powers, okay? And in this instance, it's the banks. So I, as an investor, get to go to the bank and say, hey, Mr. Banker, can I please borrow your $400,000? Oh, what for, Olivia? Oh, well, I only want to put in 10%, but can you come up with 90%? Okay, what's it for? If you turn around and say shares, they're like, no, go away. You can't have that much money and you're only putting in 10%. You're like, oh, property? Sure, here you go, no worries. And then what happens is that I personally get all of the benefits of the total purchase price of that property. So say I bought a property for $400,000 and I only put 10% in, so $40,000, and they put in the other $360,000, okay? I get, even though I put in 10%, I actually get all of the benefits of the bank's money. Okay, and some of those benefits that I want to talk to you about now is compounding and inflation. If you don't understand these 2 words, I really do encourage you to go and learn them, because these 2 words here are the most important words when it comes to money and maths, and it's the thing that we're not taught the most at school, and it's just an absolute shame. So go and start to spend 2 hours just YouTubing a couple of videos on compounding, explaining to you how compounding works. Not even, you probably in an hour will probably be enough, and you'll probably learn enough on YouTube these days. Inflation, the same sort of thing. We are in what we call a Keynesian monetary system, which meant basically I don't want to bore you too much, but in 1973, President Nixon took us off the gold standard, which meant, let's just pretend, I'm going to use my pens here and something else. Here's another pen, okay? Let's just pretend this is $1, okay? For every $1 in circulation used to be backed by 1 bit of gold, okay? In 1973, he removed that, which means they can just print money whenever they want. It's illegal if you and I go and do it, isn't it? Anyway, that's the that's the system that we're in. I'm sorry if I keep putting my hands in. I'm a little bit cold tonight. So that's the system that we are in, is we're in this inflationary period, okay? Which means things are just going to keep going up, all right? Things are going to keep going up a lot quicker than what our wages do, all right? Especially if you're swapping your time for money. Actually, inflation is literally one of the things that scares me the most, and therefore actually encourages me to invest in property, because you get the most amount of money out of property. And this is not to brag or anything like that, but in 2021, my property portfolio did the best purely because of inflation. And the reason why is because back in 2020, they printed Australia government alone. It's not even the government, it's the Fed, which is not even government owned. They printed $1.1 trillion. $1.1 trillion, not a billion, $1 trillion. And guess where that money goes? That goes into everything else that we use and see and feel and are impacted in our day-to-day life, okay? And the first place that has always impacted the most, because there is a direct direct correlation between inflation and housing. And housing can mean either the purchase price of the houses, the capital going up, or the rent as well. And guess what? We're all seeing it in 2022. Okay, when they print all this money, it feels like this short-term richness at the start, which is what a lot of sort of people were feeling throughout 2021. And then boom, inflation started to hit in the everyday things that we need to pay for. Okay, that ain't going away, because every single time something goes wrong, they print more money, and they have to print 3, 4, 5, 10 times more than the time that they printed last time. So inflation's only going to get worse. And guess what? Unfortunately, inflation's good for the existing rich, okay? And this is unfortunate, and this is where the rich get richer and the poor are only going to get poorer, or the middle class are going to become a lot more poorer. So the gap between the middle class and the rich, it's just going to go like this. The rich will keep getting richer, right? But the middle class will get poorer much quicker than what the rich will get richer, okay? Simply because of inflation. So when they print money, it is 2 birds with 1 stone for me. I get extra rich. You know why? My capital price of my properties go up, and the value of my rent. It's sad, but that's why I'm here to teach you, and that's why I want to teach everyone here as well. All right, so I just want to show you this graph for a moment. This will take 1 minute. This here is the graph of the Australian property market in Australia, okay, since the 1980s. I've got a question for you. If you could go back to the 1980s and you knew that the future was going to do this in property, how many properties would you buy? All of them. As many as you could, okay? And look at that. Even though you know that all of these global crises are about to come and these dips are about to come, guess what happens? Look at these peaks. After every single time, there's some sort of recession or something gets removed, okay? Negative gearing removed, bang. Negative gearing reinstated again, bang. Recession, oh, there's a bit of a bang. Asian financial crisis, bang. September 11, bang. GFC, bang. All right. I haven't even included the one for the recent pandemic that we've gone through over the last 2 years, but that will also be happening as well as again, because most people, I'm pretty sure it's not that secret that you don't have to be professional in the property market, that everyone knows that property's just gone through the roof, both in purchase price and rents, which is actually the highest. We just had in 2021 was the highest influx in property prices nationally that we've ever seen, ever in the history of property. How crazy is that? Cool. Let's get into the really good stuff that you can actually use and take away. So I want to teach you today that 90% of property investors get stuck at 2 properties. 90%. That is so sad. So sad. Now, when I was young, right, I was like, hang on. I knew that 90% of millionaires were made from real estate, right? But then I was like, well, I don't know anyone in my personal life who had been very successful in property. Yeah, my parents and maybe my parents' friends had 1 or 2 properties here or there, but no one had like a shitload of properties. And I was like, but everyone still talked about owning property, but no one could really articulate it. Do you know someone that's told you to invest in real estate but have never really said why or how? Right? Well, this is the why and the how today that I'm giving you. All right. So the black stuff here, that's the 71% get stuck at 1 property. A further 19% get stuck at 2. So that equals, 90% get stuck at 2 properties. So if you happen to get to 5%, guess what? If you happen to get 5 properties in Australia, you've just made the top 1% of investors. So you get to 5 or more properties, make it top 1%. That was my goal to reach that before I was 30. And I was pretty stoked when I did. And I was like, okay, what's next now? That was a bit boring. So now what's next? So let's talk about the magical formula. This is it. It's F extra. I'm just joking. It's not really. That looks a little bit hard though. Imagine if it was really that, hey. No, this is the formula for building property. These are the 3 buckets that you need in order to not get stuck. So we're going to walk through them. Growth, cash flow, and control. What the hell does that mean, Olivia? So growth means you need to be able to buy in a booming area so that you can, whatever money you put into the deal, you can pull it out within 12 months and repeat and go again. And the reason why 12 months is because we're in a little bit of a race here. We're in a race against those 2 words I was teaching you before, compounding and inflation. That shit ain't waiting for you. So we need to get moving quickly, okay? So one of those things that we do here is we need to buy in a booming suburb so that you can pull that money out and go again, so that you don't have to keep saving for deposits, because yes, you're right. I built a property portfolio using zero of my own money from the second property onwards. So yes, the hardest part about getting into real estate is just saving for the first property. Okay, and we're going to move on in a minute. I'm going to show you about how to pull out equity if you don't already know how to do that. Okay, so and what even is equity? We need to have growth. If you don't have growth, you get stuck. To be honest with you, anyone can go onto realestate.com and buy a house. You don't need my help to go and buy a house. So many Aussies do it. Okay. What you do need my help for, though, is how to build a property portfolio and how to source these type of properties. Okay. So we absolutely need growth so that you do it smarter, so that you're constantly using the bank's money rather than your money, and so you can live your lifestyle without having to save and grind for a deposit every single time. Screw that. I don't want to do that. All right. There's a smarter way about doing it, and that's getting growth. Now, if you were to buy, where I was going before was how I said anyone can go onto realestate.com and buy a house. It's so true. You can go onto realestate.com, buy your own house, and if you bought the wrong property at the wrong time at the wrong place, as long as you held it for 10 to 12 years, you'll probably do all right. You know why? Because it is factually true that properties across Australia do double every 10 to 12 years. Okay. Now that's obviously on average. Okay. So you probably do all right. Even if you just wanted to buy one house, you do all right. But who wants to wait 10 to 12 years to get results? I don't. And I didn't. So I learned how not to. And this is part of it. So the next bucket, and this bucket is very, very interesting. So you know how before I said 90% of investors get stuck? This is why. The reason why is because of a lack of cash flow. All right. So there's two reasons why we need cash flow. And I'm going to talk about the most important reason why. We need cash flow to please the banks. Okay. We need cash flow because it needs to make money. There's this thing called negative gearing in Australia, and I absolutely hate it because negative gearing was bought out for the already rich people to get tax deductions off their 9-to-5 job. And what negative gearing essentially means is that you're losing money every month in the hope that you'll make money when you go to sell the property whenever, 10, 15, 20 years later. Okay. That's also a shit strategy to me, because it means you're losing money every single month, which means it's weighing down on your own family's lifestyle. I don't know many people who would want to do that. If I go to a business owner, right, and I say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, what does your business need to make every month? Money. Well, so does your property portfolio. Your property portfolio, you need to treat it like a business, and it needs to make money every single month. Okay? So, by making money every single month, you're able to please the banks to keep moving forward. And so, yes, the reason why 90% of property investors get stuck in Australia is because they do negative gearing. Because we'll solve this negative gearing idea, which is to get a tax deduction off your 9-to-5 job. But all it's doing then is locking you into your 9-to-5 job. When aren't we investing to get ourselves out of our 9-to-5 job? So silly. So silly. Yes, negative gearing might work for really, really high income earners who want to stay working and swapping their time for money until they're old, okay? But I know that most people that come my way don't want to do that. That doesn't sound too good. Like if you bought negative gearing where you're losing money and you're having to keep it propped up. So where the reason why people get stuck from a bank's perspective, right, is because the bank turns around and says, well, no, Olivia, if you've got two negative geared properties, right, maybe you have your own home and you've got two negative geared properties, then your 9-to-5 job, 10% of your wages having to go to that property, 10% going to that property, then you've got your own personal life expenses, bam, bam. No, Olivia, you can't get any more loans because it's negatively geared, you can't afford it. That's why we need cash flow. It's just to please the banks to keep moving forward. Now, as we said before, because of those three things, and I mentioned leverage, right? Leverage is the number one reason why we love property. Well, number one reason why I love property anyway, all right? It's because I get to use the bank's money, okay? So, important reason why we need cash flow is one, to please the banks to keep moving forward. And then the second most important reason why is because it can pay us straight away. It puts extra cash flow into our back pocket, okay? So I'm going to use my hands here to teach you about negative gearing versus positive gearing, okay? Let's just pretend this hand here is the debt, okay, or all the expenses to maintain that property, okay? I'm talking maintenance, property management fees, all the insurances, and the mortgage, all right, plus more. There's other things I can't think of right now, okay? So this is the level, all right, of how much debt you have or the expenses to maintain that property. And this hand here, I'm going to use this as my income, which is the rent that I'm getting from the tenant, okay? So negative gearing is where you're at a loss, right? And somebody has to make up that difference. And usually in Australia, it's your 9-to-5 job, your paycheck, okay? And then you've got what we call neutrally geared, right? Which is just where you're breaking even. That's a pretty good position to be in. After negative gearing. I'm not too fussed about neutrally gearing if you can borrow money, okay? But then there's positive gearing, which is where you're making even more money. And I'm about to show you the average properties in a minute as well, just to get you excited about how much more money it is that you can make after all expenses. And when I mean all expenses, I mean we also include a $2,000 maintenance buffer per property per year, okay? So I make after even maintenance as well, and after all expenses, I make extra money per property per month, okay? And I'm about to show you how I've used that to retire both my partner and my mum, okay? So the reason why I love cash flow, right, is because it's that instant sort of money in my back pocket. I don't have to wait 10, 20, 30 years in order to improve my financial lifestyle. I can have my financial lifestyle improved straight away, which is the really, really cool thing, okay? Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, but what about, ethical investing? Well, guess what? Because my property's cash flow, I can afford to fix all the maintenance and all the things that go wrong in my properties for my tenants straight away. I don't have to think about it. Why? Because I've invested so smart that I can look after myself and my family and my tenants as well. The average mum and dad investor who invests, they're doing the negative gearing thing. If anything goes wrong with maintenance, guess what? It's coming out of their 9 to 5 paycheck. And then maybe they can't afford it in that month. And maybe they're like, shit, we've got to scramble because we've got to fix this heater or this aircon or the shower door that's broken. Okay? And they might have to plan it for their family, all right, to pay for that invoice. I don't have to. The second that my property manager messages me and something's wrong with the maintenance, I don't have a qualm. I'm like, no worries, go get a quote for me. 24 hours, a quote comes back. I'm like, no worries, book it in, go do it. Done. I'll pay for it. Because I've already planned for it, because my property's making money, it's cash flowing, and it's paying for itself. Okay? So my tenants don't have to sit around thinking, oh no, is my landlord going to have this thing fixed? It's probably going to be broken for 2, 4, 5 weeks. No, they don't experience that with me. The shit's fixed within 24 to 48 hours. Sorry for swearing, also not. All right, so cash flow can make an instant change on your life. Maybe can it put an extra $500 in your pocket per month, or an extra $1,000 or $2,000 in your pocket per month? Is that absolutely life-changing for everyone? I don't think it's life-changing, but it can definitely help. All right, and that's just in one property. Okay, so it keeps us. It also keeps us motivated to keep going, because you know what? Sometimes there are rickety roads. You know, dealing with all the banks, filling out all this paperwork. 6 months or 9 months later, it might have taken to purchase a property, and maybe you're like, oh, I'm a little bit drained from that. But then as soon as it settles and you have your first mortgage come out, but then you have your rent also paying. You're like, hang on, I've got extra money there. That's pretty sweet. What could you do with that extra money if you had an extra $500 or an extra $1,000 in your pocket just from one property every month? How nice would that be? Right, well, that's pretty common with what we do. All right, and it keeps you motivated because you're like, ooh, that was nice. You know what? I'm going to go and buy myself another property now because that was so easy. Okay? All right, now the third bucket is what we call control. Now, I don't want to scare you by thinking that you have to do this, because you absolutely do not. I have not done it, but it's just an extra card up your sleeve for a rainy day. That's all it is. So this control is essentially one of the amazing things about real estate is that you can mold or change that asset in some way to improve its value. All right. So, for example, what I mean by that is maybe doing a small cosmetic renovation on the inside, ripping out a yucky old kitchen and putting in a new one, for example, right? Fixtures, fittings, carpets, curtains, really simple, small cosmetic things, okay? Or maybe you want to do a subdivision or add on a granny flat or something like that, okay? This control bucket is an extra card up your sleeve for a rainy day for you to be able to do something different with your property portfolio as it grows, okay? So we like to add this in for now, all right, so that it gives you options in 5 or 20 years from now, okay? Me, as an example, right? I actually got rid of my first property, by the way, that I purchased. I didn't know what I was doing back there, just like everyone else. Okay, I got rid of it. It had growth, but it didn't tick these 2 boxes. It was negatively geared, and I also couldn't control it because of brand new build. All right, so yes, you're right. Never purchase brand new build properties because you don't have this option. Not never, just at the start of building a property portfolio, that's for sure. Because you don't have the options. I still got another property because then I built another property, and I was like, well, you know what? I don't have the option to... it's brand new build, and I don't have the option to do anything to it to improve its value. Okay, I'm stuck with that property, with how it is. Luckily, though, it's seen some growth and it's also cash flowing. That's why I've kept it. Okay, so with your say for example, I'll give you an example. Say for example, you wanted to you needed an extra $70,000, all right, worth of capital. Okay, you could go into property number 1. Pull out $10,000-$20,000 worth of equity because you purchased it in such a smart area to begin with. Okay, you can pull that out. You can go into here, do a small cosmetic renovation, and then bang, maybe that's gone up by $70,000. And guess what else? Because you've also made it look all pretty again. Guess what? 2 birds with 1 stone. You're able to put in a new tenant and pop up the new rate and charge for the brand new property that it is, of how nice it looks like on the inside. So these are some of the options that you get through property as well, which is great. Absolutely love it. Now, let's get to the good stuff. So let's talk about equity. Now, some people might know this. I used to think it was kind of common knowledge, but as I'm doing this, I've learned that actually a lot of people don't understand that you can do this. So I'm definitely going to cover it off. You can skip forward about a minute or two if you want to, if you know about this already. So in property, the hardest thing to do is save your first deposit. Absolutely don't deny it. It's not that easy, but also it's a lot more easy than what people think. So if you're at that position, come to me as well. Let me know, because I have so many cool tips and tricks and things to make it a shitload easier to save money much quicker as well. Okay. So, all right. So as you'll see here, we've got the green box, which is the cash required. Property number 1. If you've got a property already that's got equity in it, bang, you're all good to go. Okay. So equity is where it's essentially whatever your property is worth, okay, minus the debt on it. That's your equity. Now, the bank will give you, in most instances, 80, sometimes up to 90% of that money. So not 100%, but 80 to 90%. Typically about 80 we run our numbers on, okay? So I'll give you 80% of that. All right, so say, for example, you own a property, the debt was on it was $400,000, but it was worth $600,000, so you have $200,000 in there, and of that $200,000, they won't give you the total $200,000, they'll give you, 80% of the total price. So take off 120 grand, so you probably have, about $120,000 worth of cash to cash out, okay? Now, you can use that to create the deposit, not just the deposit, but to pay for the next property, for everything that you need. You can use that equity you can use the equity for absolutely all expenses to purchase the next property. No joke. The bank will actually give it to you as hardcore cash, right? Which, fingers crossed, knock on wood, you don't go to the pokies with that money. All right. Sometimes for some people who are really highly leveraged, they won't actually give you the money in hardcore cash. They'll wait for you to purchase the next property. Then they'll give it to you to purchase the next property, depending on your borrowing capacity. But I'd say 90 to 95% of the circumstances, people that I've dealt with can do that. Like the bank actually gives it to you as hardcore cash. All right. Then you use that to fund everything to purchase it. Maybe you've got a buyer's agent like my team. All right. You don't have to pay us. You use the equity to do that. The stamp duty, the deposits, the conveyances, the pest and building inspection, absolutely everything. So that you don't have to use a cent of your own money to build your property portfolio. You use the bank's money. That's one of the smartest things to do. And whilst we're on that topic, I just want to let you know that this is one of the reasons why I love debt. Like, I look at debt as my asset, because my debt is cash flowing. I'm able to utilize somebody else's money, put it into another machine that does even better than the repayments of that, and guess what? I've just used somebody else's money to make me rich. That is so beautiful. That's all the banks do. That's what the government wants you to do. Right? All right, cool. So then we pull out what we call the short-term equity, which is what I just explained. So we use that as the deposit, right? So yellow stuff ends up becoming the cash required for the next one, okay? And then maybe you get to property number 3 or 4, right? On average, most of my clients are buying 1 property per year. That's sort of the trajectory that we'd like to get you on as well, if you haven't already started. So 1 per year is pretty bloody good, okay? So by the time you get to property number 3, number 4, maybe even number 5, guess what? Property number 1, it's gone back up again, and you can go and pull out even more equity. There's no cap on equity. You can pull it out as many times as you like, as much as it's going up. I don't think I talked about the debt thing, but anyway, this is one of the reasons why I love debt, okay? Because debt is my asset. I actually personally have a goal to reach. One of my goals that I actually want to reach is to obtain $10 million worth of debt, okay? But my debt is good debt. There's a big difference, right? I don't have debt that's shitty liability debt, right? Where my shitty liability debt is something that's not tax deductible and something that's not paying you, okay? Such as a car. Right, you can't get your tax deductions unless it's within a business model, obviously, okay? Point being is, if you get cash flowing debt that is also tax deductible, like, that's just beautiful, right? Oh, this is the story I was going to say. Apple, for example, the largest company in the world with the largest amount of cash holdings, they are the largest company in the world with the largest amount of cash holdings, cash just sitting there. Guess what? They don't touch it. Why? Because any of the money that they make is they've got to pay tax on it. If you go and obtain debt from the bank, that is tax-free. Apple today got all this cash. They don't touch it. They go to the banks and get money from other people. Okay? That's the reason why I love. I'll give you a scenario, right? Say for example, if you wanted to make $50,000, I don't physically make $50,000. I go and borrow it because it's tax free. This is how money's made. This is what we're not taught in school either. Is to think like this either, right? If you wanted to go to your boss and get a pay rise of $20,000, you've earned that money. So it's called earned taxable, earned money, earned tax, right? You actually get taxed on that $20,000 if you go and earn it. If you go to the bank and ask for $20,000, you don't get taxed on it as income. Okay? It's one of the beautiful things about OPM, other people's money. Look it up. It's an actual thing. Okay? So anyway, where was I? So eventually you get down to the point where now you've got multiple different properties building equity all over the place, right? You've got all these different little moving machines where you can make money from. It's freaking beautiful, okay? Maybe you're like, you know what? I want a wedding. It's going to cost me 80 grand. What do? I go and pull out equity out of one of them and I go use it to purchase another asset that's going to make more income. It's going to make more money to then fund my wedding. Maybe you want a nice fancy $100,000 or $200,000 car, right? Go and buy an asset that funds the shitty, stupid liability. Okay? Don't pay for it yourself. Have your investment property portfolio do that for you. And that's where we got into what we call the medium-term equity as well. All right? Okay, now I promised you fun stuff. This is the actual proper fun stuff. Let's go through some examples of properties. Now, what I'm showing you here is a typical property that you would want to add into your property portfolio. Okay? We purchase properties at the moment. The average prices are reported in about July of 2022. We're still purchasing the average properties around the entry-level bread and butter properties around that $300,000 to $400,000 purchase price. There are some and very, very small amounts left where we purchase them for about $250,000, between $250,000 and $300,000, but about $300,000 to $400,000. So let's look at this property. This beautiful property. Now, we're not going to teach you about yields, but if you want to teach about yields, we'll do that in another video as well. So cash flow. Look at this purchase price, $300,000. They are cash flowing 12 grand per year, not per month, per year. So that $12,000, that's after all expenses. So, yes, that's including that $2,000 maintenance plus all the other expected bills. All right? So this person's making an extra, $1,000 in the back pocket. Boom. Okay, and after 7 months of evaluating it, right, they've also seen a total growth of 6%, which is another 18 grand. So if you had to come up with a 10% deposit for this, which was 30 grand, guess what? Cash flow, 12 grand over year one, and growth, which is only after 7 months, is 18 grand. So guess what? 12 plus 18 equals 30. Boom. That person's just made back the 10% deposit that they had to put onto this property in the first place. Now, if you use your equity, all right, from an existing property, and you use that to purchase this property, there is an ROI that I love to talk about because this is important to understand as well. When you're using the bank's money, all right, and you're using equity, it's not your money. The bank makes up debt. So guess what your ROI is, your return on your investment? It's infinite. It's infinite because you never put your own money into the deal. See now I'm starting to like this stuff? It's so cool. I don't know how people can't love real estate, but I get why they don't because, you know, there's a few misconceptions which we can also talk about as well. But anyway, beautiful way to build wealth, right? It's typical standard house. Let's check out this one. Next one, very similar sort of thing. Purchase price, $280,000. These are actual houses that we purchased, by the way, for our clients. So $280,000 purchase price. Look at that, $9,000. Like, you can't complain about grabbing the bank's money, putting it into another machine, right, to purchase something else, and then from month one you start making $1,000 a month. Like, come on. And you'd make even more money because don't forget, because the $2,000 maintenance buffer. So if you don't spend that, that's even more. But especially in year one, you are more than likely, to pay for that. Look at this total purchase price after 7 months. This person has made $53,000 after 7 months. That's in capital price of the property going up, right? So that means their return on their invested capital is 74%. You tell me where else can you get 74% ROI? Not many other vehicles, except for real estate. What does the average share portfolio do? I think at best, like 10%. But average, I think, is about 7 or 8. Okay? Other than businesses, which is pretty active, right? And that's the other reason why I like this. This stuff is not active. Like, this is the most passive thing that you could do in real estate. This is the reason why I love real estate. And the other thing, I just want to put a caveat to this. There is like 20 different ways or 20 different strategies and how to build wealth through real estate. This, what I'm showing you today, is the most passive. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to put it out there. I'm a lazy investor. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be flipping properties, doing renovations, any of that sort of stuff. I want the option to maybe one day down the track. I'm actually genuinely keen to do a couple of internal flips where you keep them, renovate them and flip them. But yeah, like you don't. It's so active. The most difficult thing about doing this is this learning part that I'm teaching you. And then the second most difficult thing after that is signing some bank documents. Like for most people, I say, do you really not want to build wealth so easily whilst you sleep because you can't be bothered watching a couple of videos and learning some stuff and signing some bank documents and then maybe dealing with some property managers later on? That's one of the most painful, that's one of the most silliest excuses I've ever heard from a lot of people. Oh, don't even get me started. I have been on a lot of forums where I've just been like, people are like, yeah, but what about you have to deal with tenants? Well, I'm like, why are you dealing with the tenants? It's what you pay your property managers for. But that's another whole topic as well we'll talk about later. So let's move on to another one. I'll just move myself over here. All right, check out this one. South Australia, 420,000, cash flow $7,000. Oh, beautiful. I can't complain about that at all. It's a perfect type of house I would want in my property portfolio. And then what happens is once you add in these real entry-level bread and butter houses and you've got all these little moving wheels, then you start to build up some capital to do the bigger deals, right? And the bigger deals are things that you start to use to retire yourself, all right? You start to add in these ones, all right? So this one, for example, is what we call a triplex, which is basically 3 houses on one. Okay, this purchase price in New South Wales, I know Charlene Banker, the friends of mine, $620,000. Purchase price. It's not even that expensive, but that's expensive for like the type of properties that we purchase, that we add in, all right? For $620,000, check this out. Cash flow is $14,000. $14,000 in year one. Now, because I happen to know these guys as well, guess what? This property is now worth $1.1 or $1.2 million after 12 months, and it's now cash flowing $21,000 or $22,000. Let's look at this one. Very similar to the last one. This one is a duplex, $635,000, cash flow $18,000. $18,000 for one property. And look at this return on invested capital, 104%. For most of our average return on our properties, by the way, is 37%. So the national average is 7%. Ours is 37%. Average over the last 4 years. Anyway, let's get back to this one. So point being is you start to add these big babies into your property portfolio. So let's look at a couple of examples. Let's just say, and I'm going to get my handy calculator here. Let's just say if you're like, Olivia, I want $50,000 worth of passive income per year. Net, whilst I sleep. You want 50K? Okay, that's easy. You can achieve that quite easily with buying these 5 properties. If you wanted $50,000 divided by 18, you only need about 3 of these type of properties. That's a little bit high risk for me. You're also not going to see growth as quick in these type of properties, and that's why you add them on later on. So you want the smaller deals like this that are actually going to get growth. Okay, so same thing. If you wanted $50,000 divided by, I'm going to do it divided by 9. Okay, you need about 5.5 properties, so 6 properties. That's it, of these type of bad boys in your portfolio. What if you wanted $100,000? Let's do the same thing. $100,000 of passive income. That's pretty nice. I think most Australians would actually like that. $100,000 divided by 9. Whoops, I just did time. $100,000 divided by 9. You need about 11 of these properties. But I mean, once you start adding in these, right, then you start to add in something like this, right? So that's where, let's get to the summary, okay? Those are these properties that I just put together, all right? All those properties I just showed you, that's these. So if you put all of those properties together, guess how much your net cash flow would be by year 5? 62 grand. This is how I retired my partner and my mum. That's it. So from year 1, I've also calculated the capital. So I keep talking about the cash flow a lot, which is really important because a lot of people don't talk about it in my industry. That's why I put so much emphasis on it. And I also put emphasis on it because of the instant lifestyle change impact that it can have on your life. Let's talk about the actual net position, the capital position, so that you'll be in. So just by holding this one property, all right, after year 5, you make 150 grand in 5 years. Now, is that a shitload of money? Depends who you're talking to, but in my eyes, that's a shitload of money whilst I sleep. I don't have to do anything for that. Maybe a couple of emails back and forth every few months to the property manager. Can't complain. So after 5 years, if you own this property portfolio, you add all this capital growth, and that's on the average of 7%, by the way. So let me just put that a caveat to you. This is an average of 7% growth per property per year, which is the Australian average. Our investors get a lot more than that. Like I said, our average growth is actually 37%. So you can only imagine what the numbers would be. Get out your calculators to do the math on that. So after 5 years, your net position to walk away with would be $1.1 million. $1.1 million that you would have made in net. Net means after all your debt. Gross would be $3.1 million is your property portfolio. It's beautiful and it's so easy to achieve. Which means if that's net, guess how much you made after 5 years? Oh, within the 6th year though, so after 5 years later, 226 grand per year. How hard is it for you to earn $226,000? I can tell you right now, I've never personally made $226,000 in a year whilst working for it. Okay? I've never worked for that amount of money and made that amount of money in my life. I was actually a really low income earner. That's the reason why I love teaching this as well. And that's all. I might put a caveat to this. This is having everything on interest only with paying down $0 worth of debt. Paying down $0, which is also profit as well. If you were to pay down even more, that's hardcore profit. After 10 years, look at that. Walk away with $2.2 million. Or you're going to have a gross position of $4 million property portfolio. And now, like I said to you before, property does what every 10 to 12 years? It doubles. So after 10 years, you sit on that $4 million property portfolio, then guess what you do for 10 years after that? It'll be $8 million. That's pretty sweet. Whilst you sleep, you do nothing with it. This is an average property portfolio. I'm now going to show you my property portfolio. Look at this. Very similar. Okay? Nothing fancy. Yes, my first properties were bought in regional Victoria. Don't buy in your back garden. Right? It's too emotional. I live down there, so don't now. But when I did, that's what I purchased. Okay? And that was the first property that I sold. Why? Because like I said before, it wasn't cash flowing. It was really negatively geared, and I had to sell it to get rid of it. Okay? Because now I purchase only properties moving forward that tick those 3 boxes that we just showed you before. I purchased one in Brisbane, one in WA, another one in Townsville, Queensland. So look at this. That's how I now make a passive income of 50 grand per year. And just to remind you as well, I worked at Optus, a telco, and I was just a frontliner worker whilst I built this entire property portfolio. Actually, up until about this portfolio, then my wage did increase. But whilst I was working at Optus, whilst I was growing this property portfolio, me and my partner only earned 55 grand a year. I love sharing that stat because I was an average income earner and I figured out how the fuck to build this property portfolio. If I can do it earning 55 grand a year, then so can you. Now, I only ever saved, like I said, one deposit, which was my first deposit to get into that first property. That gave me a huge amount of capital. Okay? So which means I used 0 of my own money from the second property onwards. That's smart. That's fucking smart. And that's what I want to teach you as well. All right? How to do more of that. So what are some things that you need to do next? 1, reach out to me. And 2, one of the first things we need to do is we need to seek out a really good broker. So if you're coming on board with myself, you'll obviously get our expertise, but you need to seek out a cash flowing investor broker. So find a broker that is pro cash flowing investors. So their forte is not helping owner occupiers. They're helping investors, and not only are they helping investors, they're helping specifically cash flowing investors, all right? Because the type of lenders, this is a make or break deal. The broker is literally the most important person that you have in your entire journey. Absolutely the most important person. Hands down, probably more important than myself. But then you need me in order to source those type of brokers because there are like they're the type of one, you're looking for the 1%ers of brokers in my industry, okay? Then we need to find out your maximum borrowing power. If you have any existing properties, we need to find out the equity that you have in there, okay? And then once we have these two numbers, which is the exact amount of equity that you have or cash that you're starting off with, okay, and your maximum borrowing power, then we work out what you tell us what your goals are and how long you have in order to reach them, okay? We work out those two goals. Then we've got the start point and the end goal. My team do the strategizing in the middle, okay? We do that. That is roughly about it, I think. So what do me and my team do? We are known for buying in booming areas. So we purchase properties all over Australia, okay, in absolute skyrocketing booming areas, which looks something like this. We buy in this mid-cycle dip, okay. Like I said, it's really important to buy in a booming area so that you can keep moving forward, because it's all about that capital, right? It's all about getting the instant amount of growth so you can use that as the deposit to go next so you don't get stuck. That is our forte, is buying in those particular areas. And the second thing that we do well is we have an end-to-end consultancy service. So we hold your hand throughout the entire process and literally do everything for you other than sign the bank documents. So, which is really cool. So if you want to know more about that, we can definitely talk more about that as well. I hope all of this was educational for you. I hope you liked it. Please do give me feedback. I really, really do respect feedback. Feedback to me is a gift, okay? So that doesn't just mean, good feedback. I'm also talking about the areas where I need to improve on as well. If this wasn't valuable, maybe if I talked too quickly, or maybe if there was a jargon word or a word that I used in this that didn't make sense, please do let me know so that I can help improve that to help others more as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this as well. Thank you.